Yeah. For Gonzaga, Sweeney, we're texting, all season throughout these games, and first game of the season, when we don't really know what Baylor is quite yet. I'm ready to bet Gonzaga to win the championship, right? Like I'm ready to go crazy with it. And as the season has gone on, I mean, not that these are necessarily bad losses, right? But they have taken a few of these, and they don't quite look like the world beaters that they did that first night of the season against Baylor. What's your sort of assessment of Gonzaga, who they are, and kind of their last, 2 to 3 weeks?
It's hard to call them anything other than disappointing. Like from where they were, from what their ceiling was, from what they brought back from a year ago, right? Like you bring back Ike and Nembhard and you add some role players around them, like the floor should be absurdly high. And I know we judge Gonzaga on an impossible standard, right? Because it's title or bust every year somehow right. For this group. And that's not fair necessarily, but to have 4 losses, all be games that you could have and maybe should have won at points. I mean, UConn probably the only game I would say that they shouldn't have won based on the way the game was played. It's a disappointment. And because they're not going to have a ton of opportunities. Now, the WCC is better than it's been, but you're not going to have a ton of opportunities to build this resume. Like, you're going to head in the NCAA tournament and your best win's going to be home Baylor and neutral Indiana. Like, that's not appealing. I guess at San Diego State's going to age pretty well. I know they lost today, but it's a good win. Like, this resume is going to be soft by Gonzaga standards, and that's concerning. And it's going to knock them down seed lines. It's going to make their path harder if they want to win a championship. Like, I still believe their ceiling is there to do that. Like, I think the best version of Gonzaga, and we've seen that at points, right? The first half against Kentucky was phenomenal. The game against Baylor was phenomenal. But the way they've closed games for a team as old and experienced as this group is, it's really been surprising and disappointing in my eyes.
Yeah, disappointing is a little bit harsh for me because, I mean, if you look at it, they lost in overtime to West Virginia. They lost in overtime to Kentucky. They lost in what was basically a road game against UConn, and they lost in what was a de facto road game in LA against UCLA, right? So we're not talking about a team that is out here losing games where you really have to be worried about them, right? These are all winnable games, and they're all games where they were against top 50 opponents on Ken Palm, and games they had a very much a chance to win. My concern would be this, is that when you think of this Gonzaga team, the first thing that you think about is their point guard, Ryan Nembhard, right? And when you think about teams that have great point guard play, you would expect great decision-making down the stretch, and you would expect situations where they're getting good shots in timely moments, and they're not making mistakes on possessions where they have a chance to win a basketball game. And I think about, the blown, they were up, 5 with 25 seconds left against West Virginia in the Bahamas, and they couldn't win that game. You think about the missed free throw from Nembhard and like that, the shot from 60 feet with 4 seconds left on the clock tonight, right? You think about the way they executed down the stretch against Kentucky. The whole point of having great point guard play is that you're able to execute down the stretch. And that has not happened in the biggest games that they've played this year. That has not happened in the closest games that they've played this year. And that is the thing that I'm concerned about. It's not so much, dropping down in terms of what seed they'd be on is something that's probably going to happen. And Gonzaga's dealt with that before, right? It's not something new that they've had to deal with. But I do think that it's a concern to me long-term that a team with one of the best point guards in college basketball continues to lose close games because of some execution stuff down the stretch. That's something that I would be a little bit, if I'm a Gonzaga fan, I'm a little bit worried about.
And it's not just that. I would just add, it's not just having the point guard play. It's the fact that they have 3 legitimate good to great big men, and they're massive, right? And they're huge guys. And I know, Ike obviously has the foul, but when you have even one good big man in college basketball, it's supposed to be a huge edge, like almost unquantifiable, right? And they have 3. So that's why I kind of lean more towards Sweeney here in terms, again, it's Mark Few. We know what they're going to be. They're going to be in the tournament. They have the talent to make a run. But I think, Sweeney, when you have that combination, right, that combination of profile of player, like you're leaving money on the table, not maximizing these games.
Yeah, look, it's not to me that they're worse than I thought they'd be. It's that their record says they're a worse team than I thought they'd be, and that hurts. Like, and I think Doster and I are probably on more similar footing than we think. Like, it's not just Nembhard. It's they start 5 seniors. They have real continuity. I think they had the second highest high major minutes continuity from a year ago. I'd have to look at the number to check, but I think it's one of the highest in the country. Like the second in the country in minutes continuity per Ken Pom. Like the fact that over and over, they're the team that's struggling late game with a Hall of Fame coach, with an elite point guard, with a big you can throw it to any time on the block and he can go get you a shot. Like it's just sort of baffling. And I want to believe that it's all going to figure itself out, and that we're going to look up in March when they've won 19 of their last 20 and say, man, this is a team that I don't want to see. And I think there's a good chance that's where we are. But these results and the way that they've closed games is going to have to stick in your mind when you're filling out a bracket on Selection Sunday, because there's no excuses for how they've closed some of these games here in the last month.